Have you ever wondered why two men can do the exact same thing in bed, and one leaves a woman numb while the other leaves her obsessed, awakened and wanting more? It's not about looks, money, or even stamina. It's about energy. The way a man shows up, his presence, his awareness, his willingness to see a woman not as something to conquer, but as something to connect with, changes everything. After working with thousands of women over decades, what I've seen again and again is this. Women don't fall for the act, they fall for the feeling. When a woman says, "He makes me feel safe," or "he just gets me," she's not talking about protection. She's talking about emotional intelligence. The kind of energy that allows her nervous system to exhale. That's where desire begins. Desire begins in the mind long before it reaches the body. It starts with a spark, a glance, a tone, an energy that says, "I see you." For women, arousal isn't linear. It's layered, emotional, and deeply influenced by what she feels rather than what she sees. Her mind is the doorway, her emotions the key. When she feels understood, her body begins to respond naturally. That's why the most powerful form of foreplay is attention. Not the kind that flatters, but the kind that focuses. The kind that listens between her words, that senses what she needs before she has to ask. Most men believe desire starts with stimulation. But women are not wired that way. A woman's arousal is like a tide. It rises with trust, it deepens with presence, and it recedes when she feels unseen or unsafe. The more you understand that her body responds to emotional signals, the more you realize that passion is a dialogue, not a demand. When she feels emotionally met, her body will naturally open. The mistake many make is trying to create physical pleasure before creating emotional safety. Without safety, the body defends. With safety, the body surrenders. Think about how her day affects her body. The way she was spoken to, the stress she carries, the expectations she battles, all these shape her capacity to feel. Women don't just turn desire on or off. They transition from tension to trust, and that transition requires patience. It requires a man to be attuned enough to notice when she's holding back and gentle enough to wait for her readiness. A woman doesn't want a man who demands her surrender. She wants a man who earns it through presence. When you make her feel emotionally seen, her body remembers what it's capable of. This is not about technique. It's about tuning in. Every woman's rhythm is different. Every woman's arousal map is unique. Some respond to words, others to energy, others to silence. The only way to know is to listen, not with your ears, but with your whole being. The body speaks through breath, tone, eye contact, and movement. When she slows down, don't rush her. When she turns inward, don't panic. Stay with her. Let her lead without needing to take control. Men often ask, what do women want? The answer isn't in a single action. It's in the experience of being fully met. She wants to feel chosen in that moment. She wants to feel that you're not distracted, not comparing, not performing. When you bring your full attention to her, you awaken her body's intelligence. Her breath deepens. Her skin becomes more alive. Her body starts to mirror your calm and curiosity. You're not trying to make something happen. You're letting something unfold. Desire for women is a feeling of being emotionally safe enough to let go of control. In a world where women are constantly asked to hold everything together, to be mothers, professionals, caretakers, and emotional anchors, the space to let go becomes sacred. When a man creates that space, she doesn't just feel aroused, she feels free. Freedom is the greatest aphrodisiac. It's the moment she stops thinking and starts feeling. And that shift, from her mind to her body, is when everything changes. To reach that level of connection, a man must master stillness. Not stiffness, not silence, but the kind of stillness that carries awareness. It's what I call energetic presence. You don't need to say much. You need to be there. Be where you are. Don't think about what's next. Don't measure performance. Breathe with her. Match her rhythm. This creates resonance. Resonance is when two bodies vibrate at the same emotional frequency. That's what makes women describe an experience as electric, transcendent, unforgettable. It's not what you did. It's who you were being while you did it. When you approach intimacy as an exchange of energy, rather than a series of actions, everything deepens. A woman can feel when your attention drifts, even for a second. She can feel when your touch is mechanical rather than intuitive. The difference is the intention behind it. If you touch her to get something, she'll feel extraction. If you touch her to give, to explore, to connect, she'll feel expansion. That's the difference between lust and love, between stimulation and awakening. Every part of her body has memory. The neck that stiffens when she feels judged. The shoulders that tense when she feels rushed. The hips that close when she feels unseen. A man who truly understands desire approaches her body as a landscape of emotions, not just sensations. He doesn't push against her resistance. He listens to it. He knows that behind every wall is a story, and behind every story is a longing to be felt without fear. The secret to making a woman obsessed isn't intensity, it's intimacy. Intensity can burn fast, but intimacy burns deep. Intensity says, "Look at me." Intimacy says, "I see you." And when she feels seen, without judgment, without expectation, her whole being begins to trust. That's when the obsession begins. Not with you as a person, but with how she feels in your presence. She starts to associate you with her own awakening, her own aliveness. That's why she can't stop thinking about you. Not because of what you did, but because of what you activated. The mind plays an enormous role here. Women's fantasies, arousal, and satisfaction are all amplified by emotional connection. When you understand that her pleasure is a mental and emotional experience before it's a physical one, you begin to focus less on doing and more on being. You begin to realize that your energy, your calm, your curiosity, your confidence, is the most erotic thing you bring into a room. A woman can sense your energy before you touch her. If your energy says, "I need to prove myself," she feels pressure. If it says, "I'm here, I see you, and I'm not in a hurry," she relaxes. Relaxation is the gateway to arousal. Without it, her body cannot open. Arousal requires safety, and safety requires consistency. Show up with integrity. Speak truthfully. Don't promise what you don't intend to give. Nothing shuts down a woman's desire faster than disappointment masked as charm. Women remember the feeling of betrayal more than any physical act. When you keep your word, when you bring emotional reliability, you create the kind of trust that unlocks her deepest desire. In Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, she explains that women's arousal systems have both an accelerator and a brake. The accelerator responds to everything that feels safe, exciting, loving. The brake responds to anything that feels stressful, pressured, or unsafe. The most skilled lovers know how to remove pressure instead of adding it. They know how to slow down, how to make space for emotions, how to let silence breathe. Silence, when held with love, becomes sacred. It tells her she's allowed to take her time. It tells her that her pace matters. To awaken a woman fully, you must meet her where she is, not where you want her to be. You must learn to read not just her words, but her breath. You must learn that every sigh, every pause, every glance carries meaning. It's not about guessing, it's about sensing. And sensing comes from stillness, not strategy. When you slow down enough to notice her subtleties, she feels that she's worth noticing. That's the moment desire deepens from curiosity into craving. Connection doesn't come from effort. It comes from authenticity. The more you try to impress her, the more disconnected she feels. But when you are fully yourself, unapologetic, kind, and grounded, she senses your truth. Women are drawn to truth like magnets. It's rare, it's raw, it's real. It allows them to drop their masks, to stop performing, to be themselves. When a woman feels that freedom, she doesn't just want you, she trusts you with her vulnerability. Desire is sustained not by novelty, but by emotional depth. It's not about how many times you touch her, but how deeply you reach her. When you understand this, you realize that every moment together is an opportunity to build trust. The way you hold her after, the way you speak to her when she's quiet, the way you protect her sensitivity instead of exploiting it, all of that builds obsession. Because obsession, in its truest form, is not addiction to a person, it's addiction to a feeling. When she feels cherished, when she feels honored, when she feels like her pleasure matters as much as yours, her whole nervous system begins to rewire. She becomes more confident, more radiant, more alive. You become not just a lover, but a catalyst. You help her remember that pleasure is her birthright, that she is worthy of being touched with reverence, that she doesn't have to hide, shrink, or apologize for wanting. The men who understand this are rare. They're not the loudest or the flashiest. They're the ones who make women feel calm in their presence, who make them laugh with ease, who listen without needing to fix. They understand that intimacy isn't about control. It's about cooperation. It's two energies meeting in balance. One offering safety, the other offering surrender. One rooted, the other flowing. When that harmony is found, it creates a magnetic field that pulls both deeper. So when I say desire begins in the mind, I mean it literally. It's born from perception, attention, and emotion. And when it finally reaches the body, it's not something you take, it's something you share. That's the secret most never learn. Pleasure isn't a reward, it's a reflection. A reflection of the space you create, the safety you provide, the energy you bring. When you master that, you don't need tricks, you don't need lines. You just need presence. Because the truth is simple. When a woman feels deeply seen, she opens. When she opens, she feels. When she feels, she desires. And when she desires in your presence, it's not because you did something extraordinary. It's because you made her feel extraordinary. That is what makes all women obsessed. Not with you, but with the way you made them remember themselves. Emotional safety is the foundation of true sexual attraction. Without it, everything else is surface, temporary, performative, fragile. Emotional safety is the invisible force that allows desire to deepen, that allows bodies to open, and hearts to trust. It's what separates connection from collision. You can touch someone's skin without ever touching their soul. But when you create emotional safety, even a glance, even silence, becomes electric. Women crave this sense of safety more than anything because their bodies are wired for sensitivity, for awareness, for protection. When a woman doesn't feel safe, her body guards her. It tightens, numbs, closes. Her nervous system retreats into defense, and her desire disappears. Not because she doesn't want intimacy, but because her body doesn't feel secure enough to receive it. The tragedy is that most people mistake this withdrawal for disinterest, when in truth, it's self-preservation. Creating emotional safety means creating space where a woman can be completely herself, where she doesn't have to perform, please, or predict your reactions. It means your presence communicates. You can exhale now. And that exhale, soft, unguarded, real, is the beginning of true arousal. It's not fireworks. It's warmth. It's not about intensity. It's about trust. Trust is the soil from which attraction grows. You can't fake it and you can't rush it. Every interaction is either building it or breaking it. When you speak truthfully, when you listen without interrupting, when you hold her emotions without trying to fix them, you send the signal that she's safe. Not safe because you won't hurt her physically, but safe because she doesn't have to hide emotionally. That's where her desire lives, underneath all the armor she's had to wear just to survive in a world that often tells her she's too much, too sensitive, too emotional. A man who creates emotional safety understands that his power isn't in dominance but in consistency. He knows that confidence isn't about control, it's about reliability. When he says something, he means it. When he listens, he's really there. When he touches her, it's with awareness, not entitlement. That's what allows her to trust him, to relax in his presence, to let her guard down and feel. And feeling is the essence of feminine desire. When she feels emotionally safe, her body stops scanning for danger. Her nervous system moves from survival into surrender. Her senses heighten, her breathing deepens, and her capacity for pleasure expands. This isn't theory, it's biology. The same part of the brain that processes emotional safety is connected to arousal. That means when she feels emotionally protected, her body becomes more responsive. Safety doesn't kill passion, it fuels it. Because only when she feels safe can she let go of control enough to lose herself in pleasure. Many men confuse excitement with tension. They think the edge of danger makes things hotter. And while novelty can create temporary sparks, lasting desire comes from trust. Without trust, passion burns out quickly. It can't sustain itself. But when trust is present, when a woman knows she can express without being judged or rejected, she becomes infinitely more open, more curious, more wild. Paradoxically, safety is what unlocks her uninhibited self. So what does emotional safety look like in action? It's the little moments. The way you respond when she's vulnerable. The way you stay when she's quiet. The way you don't make her feel guilty for her needs. It's not grand gestures, it's presence. When she tells you something personal, and instead of minimizing it, you say, "I hear you." When she hesitates, and instead of pushing, you wait. That's when her body begins to trust that you won't disappear when she shows her truth. A woman's greatest fear is not being hurt physically, It's being unseen emotionally. Emotional abandonment wounds deeper than rejection. When a man goes cold, distracted, or dismissive, her body feels it like a shock. Her heart contracts. Her arousal fades. Because to a woman, emotional safety isn't optional. It's primal. It's the condition that tells her body, it's okay to open. When you cultivate emotional safety, you're not only creating space for her pleasure, you're awakening her power. Because when a woman feels safe, she begins to express herself freely. She laughs louder, moves differently, breathes deeper. Her energy expands. That's when she becomes magnetic, radiant, irresistibly alive, and that energy reflects back to you. When she feels safe enough to open, you feel more connected, more confident, more desired. Safety doesn't just serve her, it transforms both of you. Men who understand this are rare, but unforgettable. They know how to hold space without taking space. They know how to witness emotion without making it about themselves. They can sit with her tears, her silence, her laughter, her desire, without flinching. That stability becomes an anchor. It tells her she can feel everything and still be accepted. That's when her walls melt. That's when her trust deepens. That's when her body starts to crave your presence, not because of lust, but because you feel like home. Home is what safety feels like. It's not perfect. It's consistent. It's not loud. It's grounding. When she feels at home with you, she stops performing. She stops pretending. She starts showing you the parts of herself no one else gets to see. And when that happens, intimacy becomes sacred. You move beyond sex into connection, beyond attraction into devotion. In Attached by Amir Levine, it's explained that our nervous systems are constantly scanning for safety or threat in relationships. Emotional safety tells her subconscious mind that you're a secure base, not a source of chaos. It means she doesn't have to chase reassurance or question your motives. That peace in her nervous system translates directly to openness in her body. When she's not bracing for disappointment, she can finally feel pleasure without fear. But let's be honest, emotional safety doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean never arguing, never making mistakes. It means owning those mistakes. It means apologizing sincerely, repairing quickly, and never weaponizing vulnerability. It means you value connection over being right. That kind of humility is magnetic because it communicates maturity, and maturity is what truly turns women on. A woman will choose a man who makes her feel safe over a man who only makes her feel excited every single time. Because excitement fades, but safety builds. Excitement may light the spark, but safety keeps the fire alive. Safety gives permission for depth, for exploration, for surrender, for the kind of love that feels like freedom instead of fear. When she knows you won't punish her emotions, she stops filtering them. When she knows you won't disappear when things get hard, she starts giving more of herself. That's the paradox of emotional safety. It makes her bold. It lets her explore her sensuality, her boundaries, her fantasies without shame. She feels safe enough to be wild because she trusts that your stability can hold her expansion. And when she feels that, attraction evolves. It's no longer just about the physical, it's about resonance. She's drawn to you not just because of chemistry, but because of peace. You become the place where she can rest, where she can return to herself. That's what makes her obsessed, not the thrill of danger, but the safety of depth. Every time you listen without defensiveness, every time you respond instead of react, every time you choose patience over pressure, you're teaching her body that you're safe. Her mind might forget words, but her body remembers energy. She remembers how calm she felt in your presence, how her breath slowed, how her chest softened. That's the feeling she comes back to over and over. That's the real addiction. And this is why emotional safety is not weakness. It's power. It's the foundation on which attraction, trust, and lasting desire are built. The men who embody this kind of emotional intelligence don't chase, they attract. They don't demand, they invite. Their energy says, "You can be all of you here." And that invitation is irresistible. Because when a woman feels emotionally safe, her heart opens, her body responds, her desire blooms. She becomes fully herself, and when she's fully herself in your presence, she connects you to the deepest form of pleasure there is, shared aliveness. So remember, anyone can spark excitement. But it takes depth to sustain connection. It takes awareness to build safety. And it takes love. Not the fragile kind that fears conflict, but the grounded kind that says, I'm here. I'm listening. You're safe with me. That's the kind of energy that turns attraction into devotion, that transforms desire into something sacred, and that keeps her coming back, not for what you do, but for who you are. Confidence without empathy turns women off. Confidence with care turns them on, because confidence alone can feel like arrogance, like ego wrapped in charm. But confidence grounded in empathy feels safe, magnetic, irresistible. It says, I know who I am, and I see who you are too. That balance is what every woman feels when she meets a man who truly understands connection. It's not about dominance or control. It's about presence, humility, and awareness wrapped in quiet strength. Confidence that lacks empathy makes a woman feel unseen, used, or dismissed. It might attract attention for a moment, but it never keeps it. Because a woman doesn't just respond to what a man says. She responds to how he makes her feel in his presence. A confident man without empathy radiates self-importance. A confident man with empathy radiates emotional intelligence. One takes up space, the other creates space, and women can tell the difference instantly. Empathy is the emotional bridge that turns attraction into intimacy. It's the ability to feel another's emotion without needing to fix or control it. When a man can sense her discomfort and slow down, when he can read her cues without her needing to explain every detail, he communicates safety. That's what allows her to relax. A man who can hold her tears without panic, her silence without taking offense, her joy without insecurity, that man becomes unforgettable. Women crave that combination of strength and sensitivity. They want to feel your groundedness, your decisiveness, your inner confidence, but they also want to feel your capacity to care. When you can hold both, the masculine energy of direction and the emotional intelligence of empathy, you become what I call emotionally erotic. Because nothing is more arousing to a woman than a man who is fully present, aware, and responsive. Empathy doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It tells her you have the courage to feel, not just to act, and that's rare. Most people run from feeling because it requires vulnerability, but vulnerability is where connection begins. When you can show compassion instead of defensiveness, patience instead of pressure, understanding instead of judgment, you invite her to do the same. That mutual openness is what turns connection into chemistry. Think about how it feels when someone truly listens to you, not waiting for their turn to speak, not distracted, but fully attentive. That's empathy in motion. For women, that kind of presence is foreplay. It tells her, you matter, I'm here, I see you. Her nervous system responds with trust, her heart opens, and her body follows. A man who listens deeply creates arousal without even touching, because emotional attunement is the most erotic form of intimacy. Confidence without empathy, however, shuts that door. It feels like performance, like someone proving instead of connecting. It often comes from insecurity masked as control. You can feel it in his tone, in the way he interrupts, in the way he centers himself in every conversation. That kind of confidence creates distance. It makes a woman's body tighten instead of soften. Because her intuition senses that she's not safe to be herself, she's an audience, not a partner. Empathy transforms confidence into connection. It allows a man to stand tall without towering over, to lead without overpowering, to hold space without suffocating it. That's the energy of true masculine presence, strong, steady, yet gentle. When you combine that kind of confidence with empathy, you become the kind of man a woman can both trust and desire. She feels your strength, but also your softness. She feels protected, not possessed. Real confidence doesn't come from convincing others. It comes from self-acceptance. It's quiet, grounded, unshakable. And when it's paired with empathy, it becomes magnetic. Because women feel it on a physiological level. They can sense the difference between a man who's seeking validation and a man who's giving attention. When your confidence isn't about proving your worth, it gives her permission to rest, to receive, to let go of her own defenses. In The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm, he writes that love is not a feeling to fall into. It's an act of will, a discipline, a practice of awareness. That's empathy in motion. It's choosing to see beyond your own needs, to feel what another person feels without losing your center. And when confidence grows from that foundation, it becomes irresistible because it carries both stability and sensitivity. Every woman has experienced a man who appears confident, but lacks compassion. He's charming but dismissive, assertive but emotionally unavailable. His confidence may catch her attention, but it never keeps her heart. Because underneath that bravado, there's a void. No empathy, no emotional resonance, no real depth. That kind of man drains energy instead of nurturing it. A woman's body will sense that imbalance immediately, even if her mind tries to justify it. Empathy changes the entire dynamic. When you look at her and truly see her, not just her beauty, but her emotions, her fears, her complexity, you touch something sacred. When you notice her hesitation and ask gently, "Are you okay?" instead of assuming she feels cherished. When you respect her no without resentment, you earn her yes in ways far deeper than the physical. That's the difference between performing attraction and creating connection. Confidence with care communicates maturity. It says, "I know who I am, and I honor who you are." That kind of energy disarms defenses. It allows a woman to soften because she no longer feels she has to guard herself. She can be expressive, emotional, playful, sensual, because your empathy holds her in safety. And that safety amplifies her desire. Many people mistake empathy for weakness because they confuse feeling with fragility. But true empathy requires strength. It requires the ability to stay grounded in your own emotions while meeting someone else in theirs. It's not about losing yourself. It's about expanding your capacity to connect. When you can do that, your confidence becomes a vessel for intimacy instead of a wall against it. When a woman feels that combination in you, your steady confidence and your compassionate awareness, she doesn't just like you. She relaxes around you. And when she relaxes, her feminine energy flows. Her laughter becomes fuller, her touch more open, her voice softer. She's not performing attraction. She's responding to safety. And that's when real chemistry ignites. In every interaction, empathy is the bridge between self-assuredness and connection. It's what prevents confidence from becoming dominance. It's what turns attraction into resonance. And it's not about grand gestures. It's about micro moments, eye contact, tone, timing, touch. When your touch says, "I'm here with you," instead of "I want something from you," everything changes. Her body feels that difference instantly. Confidence with care also means respecting boundaries. A confident man doesn't crumble when he hears no. He doesn't take it personally. He understands that no is information, not rejection. His empathy allows him to honor her pace, to respect her space, to trust timing. And paradoxically, that patience creates more desire. Because when a woman feels that she's free to choose, her yes becomes powerful, enthusiastic, wholehearted. When empathy and confidence merge, every gesture becomes more meaningful. The way you look at her tells her she's valued. The way you listen tells her she's heard. The way you move tells her she's safe. Confidence without empathy might make her look. Confidence with empathy makes her lean in. It pulls her closer not because of fear or fascination, but because she feels peace in your energy. The most attractive men in the world are not the ones who know everything. They're the ones who feel deeply. They're not afraid to be gentle, to be honest, to be kind. They understand that power and tenderness are not opposites. They're complements. Empathy gives confidence heart. Without it, confidence is noise. With it, confidence becomes music. Empathy also teaches you to understand her rhythms, to know when she needs closeness and when she needs space, to read between her words and trust what her body is saying. A woman's desire doesn't always express itself directly. It often speaks through tone, through energy. When your empathy allows you to notice those subtle shifts, your confidence allows you to respond without fear. You don't chase. You invite. You don't push. You align. Women are drawn to that kind of man because he doesn't just understand pleasure. He understands emotion. He doesn't run from depth. He creates it. His confidence gives her direction. His empathy gives her freedom. Together, they form the perfect polarity, structure and softness, clarity and care. Every woman remembers the man who made her feel beautiful, but she never forgets the man who made her feel safe while beautiful. That's the magic of empathy-infused confidence. It doesn't overpower her. It empowers her. It doesn't silence her emotions. It celebrates them. In the end, empathy is not just an emotional skill. It's erotic intelligence. It's the secret ingredient that makes every interaction deeper, every touch more meaningful, every moment more alive. When your confidence carries empathy, Your presence becomes magnetic. Women feel it, not in their minds, but in their bodies. They lean closer, they open up, they trust. Because you're not performing, you're connecting. And that's the ultimate truth. Empathy doesn't weaken confidence. It completes it. It makes you not just desirable, but unforgettable. Because when a man's strength holds space for a woman's softness, both are elevated. She feels seen, he feels purposeful, and together they create something that isn't just attraction. It's alchemy. Women crave connection, not performance. Because performance fades the moment it ends, but connection lingers. It lives in the mind, in the heart, in the body, long after the lights go out. Performance is about doing. Connection is about being. One impresses for a moment, the other imprints for a lifetime. Women don't remember perfect technique. They remember how they felt. They remember presence, tenderness, and the quiet electricity of being fully seen. Performance is exhausting because it comes from ego, the need to prove, to please, to win. Connection is effortless because it comes from authenticity, the willingness to show up honestly, to feel, to listen. When a man performs, he's outside of himself, observing, controlling, striving. When he connects, he's inside the moment, breathing, sensing, attuned. Women feel that shift instantly. They can tell when a man is chasing approval versus when he's simply sharing himself. Most people are taught to chase performance, to memorize moves, repeat patterns, hit marks. They think that pleasure is a formula, but desire doesn't live in formulas. It lives in energy. A woman's arousal isn't something you can trigger mechanically. It's something you awaken through presence. The most unforgettable experiences for a woman are not the ones filled with effort, but the ones filled with awareness. Connection means tuning in. It means paying attention to more than just the obvious. Her breath, her body language, her silence, they speak volumes. A woman's body tells a story, but only a man who listens can hear it. When you stop performing and start connecting, you begin to hear that language. You notice how her breath changes when she feels seen. You feel her energy shift when she relaxes. You become aware of her rhythms, her pauses, her sighs. That awareness is the art of intimacy. Performance thrives on pressure. Connection thrives on curiosity. When you're performing, you're in your head, wondering if you're doing it right. When you're connecting, you're in your body, wondering how she feels. That difference changes everything. Women can sense when your attention is fragmented, when you're thinking instead of feeling. They can feel when you're trying to prove something. And the moment that happens, their body pulls away, not out of rejection, but out of instinct. Because true intimacy requires presence, not pressure. Connection isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about being brave enough to let her see you, not the version you think she wants. When a man shows up authentically, without pretense, his energy feels grounded. That's what draws women in. They don't need a flawless performance. They need a felt experience. They need to sense that you're with them, not just beside them. A woman can tell when you're touching her to perform versus when you're touching her to connect. When it's performance, it feels like choreography, predictable, hollow, rehearsed. When it's connection, it feels spontaneous, alive, intuitive. Connection has rhythm but no routine. It has flow but no formula. It responds to what's real in the moment. And when a man learns to surrender to that flow, he becomes unforgettable. Think about it. The moments that move people most are never perfect. They're human, the glance that lasts too long, the laughter that breaks the tension, the breath you share in silence. Those are the moments that melt her. Because connection isn't about control, it's about surrender. When you stop trying to perform, you create space for magic to happen. You stop forcing and start feeling. In The Erotic Mind, Jack Morin describes eroticism as the interplay between excitement and empathy, fantasy and safety. That balance only exists in connection. When you connect, you bridge the gap between her mind and body. You make her feel safe enough to explore and excited enough to surrender. Performance tries to achieve results. Connection creates experiences. Women don't crave grand gestures. They crave attunement. The ability to notice what's happening beneath the surface. When she tenses, you slow down. When she leans in, you match her. When she looks away, you wait. That sensitivity tells her she matters. That's connection. And connection builds trust, which builds arousal, which builds desire. Men who rely on performance often misunderstand what women actually respond to. They think it's technique, endurance, or variety. But what women crave is emotional presence. They want to feel your focus, your calm, your patience. They want to feel that you're not rushing toward an outcome but savoring the journey, because the journey is where the bond is built. Performance lives in the ego. Connection lives in the heart. The ego seeks applause. The heart seeks resonance. In performance, you worry about how you look. In connection, you care about how she feels. And that's what women fall for. Not the show, but the sincerity. The way you make them feel valued, not just desired. The way you treat their vulnerability with reverence, not pressure. Connection also means allowing yourself to be affected. Many men think strength means staying stoic, unshakable, untouched. But real strength is the courage to be moved, to feel her emotions and not run, to witness her depth and not flinch. When she senses that her energy can move you, that you can feel her, not just see her, her attraction deepens. She realizes she's not alone in the experience. That's when intimacy becomes a shared current instead of a solo act. Women crave that, mutuality. They want to feel that you're not performing at them, but with them, that you're not controlling the rhythm, but co-creating it. When you move together, breathe together, laugh together, her body starts to trust your energy. And that trust opens every door that performance could never unlock. Performance says, watch me. Connection says, join me. Performance seeks to impress. Connection seeks to express. The man who understands this becomes a rare kind of lover, the kind who doesn't chase validation but evokes emotion. He becomes the man whose silence feels safe, whose touch feels like communication, whose presence feels like home. Women can feel when you're connected to yourself, because you can't connect to her if you're disconnected from you. The more you're grounded in your own breath, the more you're aware of your own emotions, the more she can feel your authenticity. Presence is contagious. If you're tense, she'll feel tension. If you're calm, she'll relax. If you're present, she'll open. That's how energy transfers in intimacy. It's not through words, but through nervous systems communicating trust. Performance often masks insecurity. It's the need to earn approval, to be enough. But connection doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. When you're connected, you don't need her reaction to validate your worth. You already know your value, so your energy becomes generous instead of needy. That's why connected men feel so attractive. They don't take energy. They share it. They give without fear of loss. Connection also transforms how you handle vulnerability. In performance, vulnerability feels like weakness. It's avoided. In connection, vulnerability becomes the bridge. When you can say, I feel nervous too, or I want to know what feels good for you, you invite honesty. You show her that it's okay to be human, to explore, to learn together. That honesty builds the kind of trust that deepens passion. The most powerful connections are not the ones filled with constant intensity, but with constant presence. Sometimes connection is quiet. Sometimes it's playful. Sometimes it's raw, but it's always real. It doesn't demand perfection. It celebrates authenticity. When you stop performing, you start seeing. And when you see, you awaken something profound. Her trust in your energy. Every woman remembers the man who made her feel beautiful, but she never forgets the man who made her feel seen. Because to be seen is to be understood without needing to explain. It's to be felt without needing to perform back. That's the essence of connection. It dissolves performance for both. You both stop acting and start being. And when you're both fully yourselves, the energy between you becomes sacred. In Mating in Captivity, Esther Perel writes that desire requires both closeness and space. Connection doesn't suffocate. It synchronizes. It allows two people to breathe together without losing themselves. That's why the deepest attraction doesn't come from intensity, but from authenticity. You don't have to do more. You just have to be more real. Performance can create pleasure, but connection creates meaning. Pleasure fades, but meaning endures. When a woman feels connected to you, she associates you with safety, with warmth, with home. Her body begins to respond to your presence before you even touch her. That's not a technique. It's chemistry born of emotional truth. Connection teaches you that the most erotic thing you can bring into any moment is attention. Not attention as in watching, but attention as in feeling with. To connect is to participate in her experience without agenda, without ego, without fear. It's to merge awareness, to sense her heartbeat through your own. When you reach that level of attunement, you don't need to perform. You just need to feel. So yes, women crave connection, not performance. Because connection feeds the soul, while performance only feeds the ego. When you learn to replace performance with presence, pressure with patience, control with curiosity, you discover what intimacy truly is, a meeting of energies, not egos. And that's when everything changes. She no longer desires you for what you can do. She desires you for how you make her feel. She doesn't crave the act. She craves the atmosphere, the warmth, the stillness, the safety, the resonance. Because connection isn't about impressing her, it's about awakening her. It's about helping her remember what it feels like to be alive, to be open, to be fully felt. Listening is the most erotic act you can master, because real listening isn't about waiting for your turn to speak. It's about opening your entire being to someone else's truth. It's about presence, stillness, and curiosity. When you listen deeply, you make another person feel seen. In a way that words never could. You dissolve the noise between you and touch something raw, human, and profoundly intimate. For women especially, that kind of listening is magnetic. It tells her that her inner world matters as much as her outer one. In a world obsessed with noise and validation, true listening has become rare, almost sacred. Most people only listen to respond. They listen through filters, through assumptions, through impatience. But when you strip that away, when you listen with your eyes, your heart, your breath, you create safety. You create an energetic field where vulnerability becomes welcome. And that's where desire lives. Not in perfection, not in performance, but in presence. When a woman speaks, she's rarely asking for solutions. She's asking for resonance. She's asking, "Can you feel me?" Not, "Can you fix me?" Real listening is not about understanding every detail. It's about communicating, through your silence and your focus, that you're with her. When she feels that, something inside her relaxes. Her nervous system softens. Her breath deepens. That's the beginning of erotic safety. The kind of safety that invites her to open. Because listening isn't just an intellectual act. It's an energetic one. The way you look at her when she talks, the way your body language mirrors hers, the way your energy quiets instead of competing. These things tell her you're present. A woman can feel in her body whether you're truly listening or just pretending to. Your attention has texture. When you're fully there, it feels grounding, nourishing. When you're distracted, it feels like absence, even if you're sitting right next to her. Listening is also foreplay, not the kind you can measure in minutes or techniques, but the kind that builds invisible threads of intimacy. When you listen to a woman without interruption, without judgment, you allow her to feel emotionally naked before she ever undresses physically. And for most women, emotional nakedness is the doorway to physical desire. She has to feel that her emotions are safe in your hands before she'll want to place her body there. Every time you listen deeply, you're saying, "I value what you feel more than my need to control the moment." That message is powerful. It melts defenses faster than any compliment or gesture. It tells her she doesn't have to perform, doesn't have to edit herself, doesn't have to rush to please. You become the man who gives her permission to be fully herself. And that's intoxicating, because being seen without judgment is the most erotic experience of all. Listening in its purest form is the art of attunement. It's the skill of aligning your awareness with another person's emotional frequency. It's what therapists, lovers, and artists all share when they're at their best. You stop trying to impose your story and instead enter hers. You don't need to fix. You need to feel. You let her truth echo inside you until it becomes part of your awareness. That's connection. That's empathy. That's arousal of the heart. In The Art of Loving, Erich Fromm wrote that love is an active practice, not a passive state. Listening is that practice. It's love in motion. Every moment of silence, every nod, every breath you take in sync with hers is a signal. I'm here. I'm listening. I see you. And when a woman feels that, she begins to trust. She begins to open. Her voice softens. Her eyes shift from guarded to glowing. You can almost feel the air between you change. That's the moment where conversation becomes chemistry. Listening also teaches patience. In a fast, reactive world, slowing down to listen feels revolutionary. But it's in that slowness that depth emerges. When you give a woman space to find her words, she finds herself. And when she finds herself in your presence, she associates you with safety, with awareness, with awakening. That's not manipulation. It's mindfulness. It's the recognition that connection grows in silence as much as in speech. The erotic power of listening lies in what it represents. Surrender. To listen is to yield your need for control. It's to say, your reality matters as much as mine. And that kind of surrender, of ego, of agenda, of impatience, is what allows intimacy to breathe. When you stop filling the space with noise, the energy between you fills with presence. That stillness becomes charged. The pauses, the glances, the shared quiet, all of it becomes foreplay for the mind. When a man listens this way, he becomes unforgettable. Because most women rarely experience it. They experience attention as fleeting, conditional, distracted. So when someone truly listens, when he stays with her words, when he doesn't rush to fill the silence, it feels like water after a drought. It awakens something ancient in her, something that craves to be understood, not analyzed. Listening isn't passive. It's one of the most active things you can do. It requires discipline, awareness, humility. It requires you to set aside your inner commentary, your assumptions, your desire to be right. You have to become empty enough to receive. And that emptiness, far from being weakness, is erotic. Because it communicates strength through stillness, a quiet confidence that says, I don't need to dominate this moment. I can hold it. In The Way of the Superior Man, David Deida talks about presence as the ultimate form of masculine power. Listening is presence in action. It's the ability to stay open while she speaks her truth, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it triggers you. When you can do that, when you can remain grounded instead of defensive, she feels safe. And safety is what allows her to drop her armor. When you listen this deeply, you begin to sense more than words. You feel the energy behind her language, the hesitations, the tone, the breath patterns. You start to recognize when her heart is speaking and when her fear is, and that recognition allows you to respond with compassion instead of reaction. It turns a conversation into communion. Listening is also how you learn her body without touching it, because the way she talks about her feelings mirrors how she experiences her body, her rhythms, her boundaries, her desires. If you can listen to her emotions, you'll know how to approach her physically. You'll know when to move slowly, when to pause, when to deepen. Emotional listening teaches physical intuition. True listening can even transform conflict into closeness. When she's upset, the worst thing you can do is interrupt or defend. The best thing you can do is stay present. Look into her eyes, breathe, let her finish. When she feels heard, her nervous system calms. Her tone softens. What was once confrontation becomes connection. That's the alchemy of listening. It turns tension into trust. Listening also demands vulnerability. To really hear someone, you have to risk being changed by them. You have to let their words touch you, even if it challenges your beliefs. That openness is what makes listening erotic. It's intimate, it's risky, it's alive. It's two nervous systems meeting without armor. That's why great listeners are unforgettable lovers. They don't just hear, they absorb. The deeper truth is this. Women don't crave dominance, they crave depth. They crave men who can meet them emotionally, who can handle silence without needing to escape it, who can hold space for complexity without retreating. Listening is how you prove you can do that. Every time you listen without judgment, you say, your feelings don't scare me. And that kind of steadiness is irresistible. Erotic listening isn't about technique. It's about energy. It's the difference between hearing with your ears and hearing with your whole being. It's what happens when you lean into the moment with curiosity instead of control. When your silence says, I'm here, louder than any words could. Because in that silence, she feels something she's been yearning for. Not just attention, but attunement. She realizes she doesn't have to perform to be understood. She doesn't have to earn her space. And in that realization, desire blooms. Because desire grows where safety and curiosity meet. So yes, listening is the most erotic act you can master. Not because it's romantic, but because it's revolutionary. It slows the world down. It replaces ego with empathy, noise with presence, performance with depth. It tells her, I see you, and more importantly, I feel you. And when a woman feels that, when she feels truly heard, her whole being opens. Her voice, her breath, her heart, her body. Listening isn't foreplay before connection. It is connection. It's the pulse beneath every word, the silence between every breath. It's what turns attraction into intimacy and intimacy into love. And when you master it, not as a tactic, but as a truth, you'll discover that the most erotic sound in the world isn't a moan or a whisper. It's the quiet moment when she exhales, knowing she's finally been heard. Female arousal thrives on presence, not pressure. Because pressure closes what presence opens. The female body does not respond to force. It responds to feeling, safety, curiosity, and time. Pressure demands, presence invites. And that difference changes everything. When a woman feels pressured, her body tightens, her breath shortens, her nervous system prepares to protect itself. But when she feels presence, steady, patient, attuned, her body begins to soften. Her breath deepens, her energy flows. Presence tells her she's safe enough to let go. So many people confuse intensity with intimacy. They think more effort, more action, more speed equals more pleasure. But female desire moves in waves, not straight lines. It's slow, rhythmic, alive. It needs space to unfold, to trust, to breathe. The more you chase it, the more it retreats. But when you wait with awareness, when you stop trying to make something happen, you create an atmosphere where arousal naturally arises. That's the paradox of pleasure. It blooms when it's not forced. Pressure is the enemy of arousal because it signals danger. It tells her body she must perform, prove, or please. Even subtle pressure, the expectation to respond a certain way, to match your pace, to hurry, creates a quiet tension. And tension is the opposite of turn-on. You can't force openness. You can only invite it through energy that feels grounded, patient, and emotionally attuned. Presence says, I'm here with you. Pressure says, I need something from you. Women feel that difference in their bones. Presence means you're not waiting for a result. You're not measuring success by response. You're simply being. You're connected to your own body, your breath, your sensations, and through that connection, you invite hers. It's less about doing something to her and more about being something with her, calm, awake, grounded. The female body opens in the presence of genuine attention, not performance. When you're present, you notice the smallest details, the way her breath changes when she feels safe, the way her skin reacts when your energy softens. You start reading her not through logic but through rhythm. And when she feels that attunement, when she senses that your energy is responding to hers rather than imposing on it, her trust deepens. Trust is the soil from which arousal grows. Pressure kills trust because it shifts the focus from connection to expectation. And expectation disconnects you from the moment. It makes you chase instead of experience. Presence, on the other hand, dissolves time. When you're fully there, without agenda, without hurry, you enter a different dimension of intimacy. One where touch becomes communication, breath becomes language, and silence becomes a pulse of energy between you. Women can feel the difference instantly. They can feel when your energy says, take your time, instead of, hurry up. They can feel when your focus is on connection, not conquest. Presence allows her to explore, to feel her own body without fear of judgment. Pressure makes her self-conscious, but presence makes her self-aware. One closes her, the other frees her. The feminine doesn't bloom under demand. It blooms under devotion. Devotion isn't about worship. It's about attention, reverence, care. It's about being fully there with no goal except to experience the truth of the moment. When you bring that energy into intimacy, everything changes. You move from trying to make something happen to allowing something to happen. In Come As You Are, Emily Nagoski describes arousal as a responsive system. It awakens when it feels safe, relaxed, and curious. Presence provides that safety. Pressure, even when unspoken, tells her system to shut down. That's why the most confident magnetic lovers aren't the ones who rush. They're the ones who wait. They trust the moment, trust her pace, trust that the connection will unfold naturally. Presence also means you're connected to your own sensations. You're not lost in your head, wondering what she's thinking. You're in your body, breathing, feeling, grounded. That groundedness transmits to her. When your nervous system is calm, hers mirrors it. When yours is anxious, hers tightens. Women's bodies are highly intuitive. They respond to energetic cues more than words. That's why the most powerful thing you can bring into intimacy isn't technique. It's your state of being. Pressure often comes from insecurity, the fear of not being enough, not performing well, not satisfying her. But that fear disconnects you from presence. You start thinking about yourself instead of feeling her. You start chasing validation instead of connection. When you release that need to prove, you make space for genuine intimacy. Because women don't need you to perform. They need you to feel. They need you to slow down enough to notice, to sense, to respond. Presence transforms touch. When you're present, every movement becomes meaningful. Even the simplest gesture, a hand on her arm, a breath near her neck, feels amplified. It's not about doing more. It's about feeling more. When you're aware of your touch, when your attention moves through your fingertips, your energy communicates something deeper than words. I'm here. That's what her body responds to. Not speed, not skill, but sincerity. Arousal isn't a goal, it's a journey. And presence keeps you on that journey without rushing to the destination. The most unforgettable experiences are the ones where both people lose track of time because they've surrendered to the rhythm of the moment. There's no timeline, no expectation, just curiosity. That's the space where true connection happens. Pressure is always future-focused. It's about getting somewhere. Presence is about now, and now is where arousal lives. The female body opens in real time, moment by moment, breath by breath. When you slow down enough to feel that unfolding, you begin to understand the sacred intelligence of her body. It doesn't need to be pushed. It needs to be witnessed. Presence also allows mistakes to become part of the connection. When you're present, you can laugh, adjust, explore without fear. Pressure creates performance anxiety. Presence creates play, and play is essential to pleasure. It's what keeps intimacy light, curious, alive. When you treat connection as a dance rather than a test, you take the pressure away. You replace fear with freedom. The more present you are, the more sensitive you become to her cues, the subtle shifts in energy, the micro expressions, the pauses. You start realizing that her arousal isn't a reaction to you. It's a reflection of how safe she feels in your presence. You stop trying to turn her on and start allowing her to turn herself on in your company. That's the difference between control and connection. In The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk explains how trauma and stress live in the body. For many women, pressure triggers that stored stress. It reminds them, unconsciously, of moments they weren't free to choose. That's why pressure, even when disguised as passion, can feel invasive. Presence, by contrast, gives her back her choice. It tells her, you're in control, you're safe, you're free. And when she feels that freedom, her body becomes receptive. Presence is also about listening with your whole being, not just to her words, but to her energy. When she slows, you slow. When she deepens, you follow. When she hesitates, you hold space. This is the art of attunement. It requires patience, humility, and courage. The courage to surrender control and trust the moment. The irony is that presence often feels like doing nothing, but it's actually doing everything. It's the invisible force that transforms touch into electricity, eye contact into intimacy, stillness into seduction. When you're fully present, she doesn't feel like you're doing something to her. She feels like you're with her. That togetherness is what awakens her deepest arousal. Pressure makes a woman retreat into her mind. She starts wondering, am I doing this right? Does he like this? Presence allows her to drop into her body, to feel rather than think. When she's in her body, everything becomes heightened. Her sensations, her breath, her awareness. That's when pleasure becomes multidimensional. Not just physical, but emotional, even spiritual. Presence isn't silent obedience. It's dynamic awareness. It's being tuned into her like music, knowing when to pause, when to build, when to soften. It's not about control. It's about co-creation. You're not the conductor. You're part of the orchestra. The rhythm between you becomes alive when you stop trying to lead and start listening. And here's the secret. When you cultivate presence with women, it spills into every part of your life. You become more grounded, more magnetic, more alive. Because presence is not just a skill, it's a state of being. It's how you move through the world. It's how you breathe, how you touch, how you listen. Women feel presence the way flowers feel sunlight. It's nourishment. It's warmth. It's what allows them to bloom. Pressure may produce compliance, but presence produces connection. And connection is where true pleasure lives. Not the fleeting kind, but the kind that transforms both people. So remember, female arousal doesn't thrive under pressure. It withers. It thrives in presence, in patience, in energy that says, "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." When you bring that energy into any moment, you stop chasing pleasure and start creating it. You become not just a lover, but a safe place. And in that safety, she doesn't have to perform. She just gets to be. That's when her body stops resisting and starts responding. That's when arousal ceases to be something you do and becomes something you share. Because presence isn't about achieving, it's about awakening. It's about showing up so fully that she feels seen, felt, and free. And that, more than anything else, is what makes female desire not just possible, but inevitable. The way you touch reflects the way you see her. Every gesture, every brush of your hand, every pause in your movement carries a message. It tells her what you believe she deserves, what you believe about her worth, what you feel about her presence. Touch is not neutral. It's language. It reveals whether you see her as an object to please or a person to connect with. Whether your touch says, "I want to have you," or "I want to know you." A woman can tell the difference instantly, not through thought, but through sensation. Her body reads intention faster than her mind can interpret words. When you touch a woman with reverence, her body responds with trust. When you touch with rush or entitlement, her body retreats. Because touch, at its deepest level, is communication. It speaks before words, beyond words. It speaks of care, curiosity, and consciousness, or of selfishness, impatience, and ego. That's why true intimacy begins long before the first kiss or caress. It begins with how you see her. When you see her as sacred, your touch becomes worshipful, not transactional. It becomes a bridge between souls, not an act of taking. A woman's body can feel when you're truly present. When you touch with awareness, she feels your energy more than your hands. Presence transmits safety. It tells her, "You're safe here to be yourself, to feel, to unfold." When you touch without presence, even if the movement is gentle, it feels empty, hollow, disconnected. Because the power of touch doesn't come from pressure or technique. It comes from consciousness, from the intention behind it. Touch is how energy becomes physical. It's how emotion becomes tangible. When you touch her with tenderness, you say, "I see you." When you touch her with curiosity, you say, "I want to understand you." When you touch her with patience, you say, "You matter." But when you touch with hunger or haste, you say, "You're a means to my pleasure." That difference determines whether her body opens or closes, whether she feels cherished or used. The female body, unlike the male, often requires emotional alignment before physical surrender. She can only open fully when she feels seen and respected. If she feels unseen, her body protects itself, even if her mind says yes. That's why so many women feel disconnected during intimacy. They're touched physically but unseen emotionally. The touch becomes mechanical, devoid of soul. But when a man truly sees her, her energy, her depth, her humanity, his touch transforms. It becomes slower, deeper, attuned. In The Body Remembers, Babette Rothschild describes how the nervous system stores memories of touch, safe or unsafe. Every woman carries those memories. Some touches taught her love, others taught her fear. When you touch her, you're not just meeting her skin, you're meeting her story. You're meeting all the moments her body learned to trust or to guard. Your energy tells her whether she can release or whether she must protect. Touch can heal. It can rewrite old stories of shame or pain, but only when it's guided by reverence. A conscious touch doesn't demand. It listens. It pays attention to subtle cues, the shifts in breath, the trembling pause, the sigh of release. It doesn't force. It follows. It asks through sensation, "Is this okay? Is this welcome?" That's how trust is built. Not through words, but through energy that listens. When you touch her as if she's fragile, she feels diminished. When you touch her as if she's an object, she feels used. But when you touch her as if she's powerful, sacred, alive, she feels awakened, because the body responds not to touch alone, but to meaning. The meaning you assign to her through your energy becomes the experience she has with you. The way you touch her mirrors, how you hold her existence. Do you approach with gratitude or with expectation? Do you touch as if it's a privilege or a right? The men who create unforgettable intimacy are those who touch with awe. Their energy says, "I can't believe I get to experience this with you." That energy melts her. Because awe carries humility, and humility is deeply erotic. It makes space for the divine in the human. Touch is also an amplifier of your emotional state. If you touch her while anxious, she feels the tension. If you touch her while grounded, she feels safety. If you touch her while detached, she feels alone. That's why emotional regulation is essential to intimacy. Your touch carries your truth, whether you intend it or not. You can't fake presence. The body always tells the truth. Presence in touch means slowing down enough to actually feel her response, to notice when her breath deepens, when her muscles soften, when her energy shifts. Many men focus so much on performance that they miss these cues. They touch with their hands, not their attention. But a conscious lover touches with his entire being, with his awareness, his breath, his empathy. His touch becomes a mirror of his consciousness. Think about how artists handle their work. A sculptor's touch is firm yet gentle, deliberate yet adaptive. He doesn't rush. He feels the shape reveal itself beneath his hands. That's what conscious touch feels like. It's a dance between intention and surrender. It's not about control but co-creation. You're not imposing pleasure. You're discovering it together. The feminine responds to being felt, not handled. She wants to feel that your touch carries respect, that you're listening through your fingertips. When you touch her this way, you're not just arousing her, you're awakening her. You're saying without words, you are worth slowing down for. And that, more than anything else, turns her on. Because slowness says, you're not a task. You're a temple. Touch also reflects how you see yourself. If you're insecure, your touch will be hesitant, searching for approval. If you're ego-driven, your touch will be forceful, seeking to impress. But if you're grounded in self-worth, your touch will be balanced, confident yet caring. Women feel that balance. They can sense when your energy is stable, when you're not seeking something from them but sharing something with them. In Lovers in a Dangerous Time, Bell Hooks writes that real love cannot exist where domination does. That truth applies to touch too. A loving touch is never about control. It's about communion. It's about equality in energy. Two people meeting with awareness, not hierarchy. When you touch with love instead of dominance, her body doesn't resist you. It receives you, because love communicates through sensation. I see you as whole. The way you touch also teaches her how to touch you. Your energy sets the tone. When you move with awareness, you invite her into the same presence. You create an unspoken rhythm where both of you listen, respond, adjust. Touch becomes a language you both speak fluently without words. And in that language, intimacy becomes effortless. Touch can reveal the parts of you that words can't. The tenderness you're afraid to express. The admiration you don't know how to verbalize. The gratitude you can't fully explain. It all flows through your hands. When you allow your touch to carry truth instead of performance, it becomes transformative. You stop trying to make her react and start allowing her to feel safe enough to respond naturally. When you see a woman as a person, not an ideal, not a fantasy, your touch reflects that truth. You touch her as if she has history, emotions, complexity. You hold her with understanding that she's not there to fulfill your story but to share an experience. That level of respect changes everything. It turns every moment into intimacy, even outside the bedroom. A hand on her back, a brush of your fingers on her arm, these become affirmations of care. The truth is, women remember touch far longer than words. They remember how your hand made them feel, seen, respected, desired, safe. They remember the energy behind it. Because touch imprints memory in the body. When your touch is conscious, it becomes healing. When it's careless, it leaves residue. So when you touch her, ask yourself, what am I saying without words? Am I seeing her or just seeking her? Am I giving or taking? Am I present or performing? Because your answers shape not just the moment, but how she experiences herself in your presence. To touch consciously is to honor the human body as sacred territory. It's to recognize that pleasure isn't about conquest. It's about communion. It's to understand that every gesture, no matter how small, carries the potential to heal or to harm. The way you touch reflects the way you see her. And when you see her clearly, not as an object of desire but as a being of depth, you begin to touch differently. You slow down. You breathe. You listen. You realize touch isn't about achieving an outcome. It's about expressing reverence. Because in the end, what every woman wants is not just to be touched but to be felt. To know that when your hands are on her, your heart is too. That when you touch her, you're not reaching for control. You're reaching for connection. When you touch her this way, she doesn't just feel pleasure. She feels recognized. She feels honored. She feels alive. And that kind of touch doesn't end when you pull away. It lingers, echoes, transforms. Because the body never forgets being seen with that much truth. She's talking about emotional intelligence. The kind of energy that allows her nervous system to exhale. That's where desire begins. Desire begins in the mind long before it reaches the body. It starts with a spark, a glance, a tone, an energy that says, I see you. For women, arousal isn't linear. It's layered, emotional, and deeply influenced by what she feels rather than what she sees. Her mind is the doorway, her emotions the key. When she feels understood, her body begins to respond naturally. That's why the most powerful form of foreplay is attention. Not the kind that flatters, but the kind that focuses. The kind that listens between her words, that senses what she needs before she has to ask. Most men believe desire starts with stimulation. But women are not wired that way. A woman's arousal is like a tide. It rises with trust. It deepens with presence. And it recedes when she feels unseen or unsafe. The more you understand that her body responds to emotional signals, the more you realize that passion is a dialogue, not a demand. When she feels emotionally met, her body will naturally open. The mistake many make is trying to create physical pleasure before creating emotional safety. Without safety, the body defends. With safety, the body surrenders. Think about how her day affects her body. The way she was spoken to, the stress she carries, the expectations she battles, all these shape her capacity to feel. Women don't just turn desire on or off. They transition from tension to trust. And that transition requires patience. It requires a man to be attuned enough to notice when she's holding back and gentle enough to wait for her readiness. A woman doesn't want a man who demands her surrender. She wants a man who earns it through presence. When you make her feel emotionally seen, her body remembers what it's capable of. This is not about technique. It's about tuning in. Every woman's rhythm is different. Every woman's arousal map is unique. Some respond to words, others to energy, others to silence. The only way to know is to listen, not with your ears, but with your whole being. The body speaks through breath, tone, eye contact, and movement. When she slows down, don't rush her. When she turns inward, don't panic. Stay with her. Let her lead without needing to take control. Men often ask, what do women want? The answer isn't in a single action. It's in the experience of being fully met. She wants to feel chosen in that moment. She wants to feel that you're not distracted, not comparing, not performing. When you bring your full attention to her, you awaken her body's intelligence. Her breath deepens. Her skin becomes more alive. Her body starts to mirror your calm and curiosity. You're not trying to make something happen. You're letting something unfold. Desire for women is a feeling of being emotionally safe enough to let go of control. In a world where women are constantly asked to hold everything together, to be mothers, professionals, caretakers, and emotional anchors, the space to let go becomes sacred. When a man creates that space, she doesn't just feel aroused, she feels free. Freedom is the greatest aphrodisiac. It's the moment she stops thinking and starts feeling. And that shift, from her mind to her body, is when everything changes. To reach that level of connection, a man must master stillness. Not stiffness, not silence, but the kind of stillness that carries awareness. It's what I call energetic presence. You don't need to say much. You need to be there. Be where you are. Don't think about what's next. Don't measure performance. Breathe with her. Match her rhythm. This creates resonance. Resonance is when two bodies vibrate at the same emotional frequency. That's what makes women describe an experience as electric, transcendent, unforgettable. It's not what you did. It's who you were being while you did it. When you approach intimacy as an exchange of energy, rather than a series of actions, everything deepens. A woman can feel when your attention drifts, even for a second. She can feel when your touch is mechanical rather than intuitive. The difference is the intention behind it. If you touch her to get something, she'll feel extraction. If you touch her to give, to explore, to connect, she'll feel expansion. That's the difference between lust and love, between stimulation and awakening. Every part of her body has memory. The neck that stiffens when she feels judged. The shoulders that tense when she feels rushed. The hips that close when she feels unseen. A man who truly understands desire approaches her body as a landscape of emotions, not just sensations. He doesn't push against her resistance. He listens to it. He knows that behind every wall is a story, and behind every story is a longing to be felt without fear. The secret to making a woman obsessed isn't intensity, it's intimacy. Intensity can burn fast, but intimacy burns deep. Intensity says, "Look at me." Intimacy says, "I see you." And when she feels seen, without judgment, without expectation, her whole being begins to trust. That's when the obsession begins. Not with you as a person, but with how she feels in your presence. She starts to associate you with her own awakening, her own aliveness. That's why she can't stop thinking about you. Not because of what you did, but because of what you activated. The mind plays an enormous role here. Women's fantasies, arousal, and satisfaction are all amplified by emotional connection. When you understand that her pleasure is a mental and emotional experience before it's a physical one, you begin to focus less on doing and more on being. You begin to realize that your energy, your calm, your curiosity, your confidence, is the most erotic thing you bring into a room. A woman can sense your energy before you touch her. If your energy says, "I need to prove myself," she feels pressure. If it says, "I'm here, I see you, and I'm not in a hurry," she relaxes. Relaxation is the gateway to arousal. Without it, her body cannot open. Arousal requires safety, and safety requires consistency. Show up with integrity. Speak truthfully. Don't promise what you don't intend to give. Nothing shuts down a woman's desire faster than disappointment masked as charm. Women remember the feeling of betrayal more than any physical act. When you keep your word, when you bring emotional reliability, you create the kind of trust that unlocks her deepest desire. In Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, she explains that women's arousal systems have both an accelerator and a brake. The accelerator responds to everything that feels safe, exciting, loving. The brake responds to anything that feels stressful, pressured, or unsafe. The most skilled lovers know how to remove pressure instead of adding it. They know how to slow down, how to make space for emotions, how to let silence breathe. Silence, when held with love, becomes sacred. It tells her she's allowed to take her time. It tells her that her pace matters. To awaken a woman fully, you must meet her where she is, not where you want her to be. You must learn to read not just her words, but her breath. You must learn that every sigh, every pause, every glance carries meaning. It's not about guessing, it's about sensing. And sensing comes from stillness, not strategy. When you slow down enough to notice her subtleties, she feels that she's worth noticing. That's the moment desire deepens from curiosity into craving. Connection doesn't come from effort. It comes from authenticity. The more you try to impress her, the more disconnected she feels. But when you are fully yourself, unapologetic, kind, and grounded, she senses your truth. Women are drawn to truth like magnets. It's rare, it's raw, it's real. It allows them to drop their masks, to stop performing, to be themselves. When a woman feels that freedom, she doesn't just want you, she trusts you with her vulnerability. Desire is sustained not by novelty, but by emotional depth. It's not about how many times you touch her, but how deeply you reach her. When you understand this, you realize that every moment together is an opportunity to build trust. The way you hold her after, the way you speak to her when she's quiet, the way you protect her sensitivity instead of exploiting it, all of that builds obsession. Because obsession, in its truest form, is not addiction to a person, it's addiction to a feeling. When she feels cherished, when she feels honored, when she feels like her pleasure matters as much as yours, her whole nervous system begins to rewire. She becomes more confident, more radiant, more alive. You become not just a lover, but a catalyst. You help her remember that pleasure is her birthright, that she is worthy of being touched with reverence, that she doesn't have to hide, shrink, or apologize for wanting. The men who understand this are rare. They're not the loudest or the flashiest. They're the ones who make women feel calm in their presence, who make them laugh with ease, who listen without